the program, you will see that we have various esteemed speakers, and recognizing everyone would definitely amount to crawling through a minefield. I'm sure you'll agree with me. More than 15 years ago, we visited the premier of the most beautiful and lucrative province, KZN, who was an ambassador in the Czech Republic. And she authoritatively advised me never to say all protocols observed. I'm sure you'll remember that, Premier. So allow me to recognize you all distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me also make a few remarks and promise that my remarks further down the line, I would never make any remarks. This is the only time that I really want to say a few words. And maybe before we even do that, actually, I have been advised that a national anthem has been, I'm not sure whether it will play live here, but as Africans, really, we must also sing it. So allow me to ask everyone in the room to rise.
Celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sky and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny, our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice, honor. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind and fount of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life.
Could we please also sing Nkosi Sikelel' Africa?
Let us all unite.
certainly have to make an attempt to learn the lyrics of the African anthem. We all have to sing it. It's a responsible thing when we're talking about integrating people of Africa. It starts with the anthem. Why are we here today and tomorrow? And what do we hope to achieve are the questions that will be answered by the next speaker, our mayor, Mr. Mxolisi Kaunda. What do I see from where I am standing? I see a room filled with leadership from the private and the public sector that is geared to resolve energy crisis in eThekwini, in KZN, and in South Africa. I see leadership that is calling for a centralized, programmatic approach between the leaders of all spheres of government and private sector. I see leaders in government who are exhibiting commitment to strengthening collaboration with private energy sector and its investors. I have no doubt that we are all single-minded in finding practical and immediate solutions for energy crisis. I have no intention, ladies and gentlemen, of stealing thunder of coming speakers. I'm sure all of you would want to hear from the speakers a clear and definitive roadmap on the implementation of the state of disaster on electricity crisis. We have to reflect on what that means. You can be excused for defining a state of disaster as a situation of national danger or disaster in which a government suspends normal constitutional procedure in order to regain control. I've noted that we have no speaker representing the environmentalist. We need to be clear as to how we should be responding to environmentalists in the context of the state of disaster on electricity. Our approach to environmental issues is an elephant in the room. For example, there are many scholars who are of the view that whilst cleaner energy sources are critical, if you wanted to resolve the energy crisis, you need to begin to look at gas, for example, in the eThekwini region. We need to be looking at gas, in the country. So we certainly have to spend time engaging the environmentalist. In fact, we should be aiming to become experts as a country in cleaning and commercializing bad emissions and begin to look at all the energy sources, including the coal. We must begin to engage PIC and the banks on the issue of coal generation. One has noted that the banks tend to, or they have developed an attitude that is anti-coal. So really, it is a call that is made being made by a business to begin to look at coal generation as part of the energy source in the country. We continue as a country to pursue renewables and continue to aim for the sky in that direction. We have a state of emergency on electricity and must align our emergency actions and the law accordingly. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, allow me to call on stage the father of this city, His Worship the Mayor, Mr. Mxolisi. They also tell me that is also Armstrong Kaunda. Thomas rather, Kaunda.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mr. Dembe, the co-chair of Crude Coalition in the province, Honorable Premier of our province, Her Excellency Nomusa Dube Ncube. Thank you very much. We understand that in terms of time, there is an executive today, but thank you for availing yourself for this occasion. Honorable Siboniso Duma, the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in our province, who's also the chairperson of the African National Congress in KwaZulu-Natal. We greet your leadership. We wish to acknowledge the Deputy Mayor of our municipality, Councillor Mieni, who's present with us today, as well as Councillor Temboguhle Ntuli, who's the chairperson of Economic Development in this municipality. All councillors are present. Ambassador Anil Sukla, Ambassador for Asia and BRICS at large, Mr. Prashin Maharaj, the President of Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, with the CEO and members present, all the other chambers that are present today. The speakers who are lined up to make valuable contributions to this summit, as our honorable guest, we welcome you. The mayors from different municipalities, my counterpart, deputy mayors, speakers, councillors present. The esteemed guests, captains of industry, CEOs of business entities, social enterprises, cooperatives, the representatives of our associations for business forums in the city. We wish to recognize all of you, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. Good morning. Sanbonan. It is a singular honor to welcome you to this eThekwini Municipality Energy Transformation Summit, the first of its kind in our province. As the leadership of the municipality, we view this two-day gathering as a landmark event that will provide lasting solutions to the perennial energy crisis that we are faced with. The fact that in our midst we have energy experts, academics, investors, and leadership from all spheres of government demonstrates that energy security is everybody's business. We want to state from the outset that the government's position that energy transition must be just and support national development aspirations, including decent work for all, social inclusion, and the eradication of poverty. The National Development Plan envisaged that by 2030, South Africa will have an energy sector that provides reliable and efficient energy service at competitive rates and socially equitable through expanded access to energy at affordable tariffs and environmentally sustained through reduced pollution. While a great deal has been achieved, the energy crisis is reversing. the gains we have made in achieving this noble goal. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa continues to grapple with the capacity shortages due to aging infrastructure and constant breakdowns of power generation plants. The Council for Scientific and Industrial Research reported that year 2022 overlooked 2021 as the most intensive load-shedding year in history. Eskom recorded a whopping 11,529 GWh of load shedding. This is equivalent to removing the eThekwini municipality from the national grid for 1 year. Therefore, we need to revolutionize the energy system by implementing our strategic goals as outlined in the Integrated Resource Plan, our IRP of 2019. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has provided a clear strategic direction of the energy sector with timelines to procure new generation capacity from independent power producers. We also applaud the decision to allow municipalities in good financial standing to procure electricity directly from the independent power producers. We welcome these reforms at all governments because they have a potential to improve energy security for municipalities. We strongly believe that the national state of disaster recently announced by the President will accelerate this process. As we have indicated that this energy transformation will not leave anyone behind. The city's energy transition policy was subjected into a rigorous process of public participation as informed by Section 17 of the Municipal Systems Act. Therefore, we are proud to share with you that the vision and strategic targets articulated in the energy transformation policy were formulated in consultation with the public. Ladies and gentlemen, as a city, we have set ourselves a target of reducing reliance from the national grid by 20% in 2025. Furthermore, we plan to reduce reliance by 40% in 2030 and ultimately achieve energy independence by 2035. We have no doubt that we are on the right path to achieve this goal, as we have already created a municipal independent power producer procurement program with over 30 priority energy infrastructure projects over short, medium, and long term. In the short term, we are procuring new generation capacity of 400 megawatts from independent power producers. 100 megawatts has been allocated to solar PVs and 300 megawatts from gas to power, our GTP. We are anticipating achieving commercial operational date by 2025 and 2026, respectively. We are happy to announce that the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Executive Council has given concurrence to our procurement plan for 400 megawatts in line with eThekwini energy transition policy. The National Treasury has also given permission to eThekwini Municipality to begin preparing the procurement framework to release of 400 megawatts requests for proposals, the RFPs. The request for proposals for 400 megawatts will be released into the market in the new financial year. We start our new financial year in July this year. This will create approximately 8,000 job opportunities through a public-private partnership model, the PPP. In the medium to long term, we are planning to procure an additional 2,600 megawatts of new generation capacity to adequately boost regional transformation. eThekwini Municipality will start new procurement of 50 megawatts from waste to energy, 300 megawatts offshore wind, and 940 megawatts of nuclear power in the new financial year. eThekwini Municipality generates over 1.4 million tons of waste, which put us in a better position to increase capacity to draw energy from this source and most importantly, to encourage communities to participate meaningfully in the economic sector. Ultimately, our transformational energy mix will attract more than 324 billion rands in private investment by 2035. We'd like to indicate that our energy transition policy does not favor a single type of technology. It is for this reason that we'll also procure 400 megawatts of new coal capacity to strengthen local supply value chains and create more stability in the power system. We know that many parts of this province have an abundance of coal reserves that are still there. When it relates to financial sustainability and revenue enhancement, ladies and gentlemen, our energy transformation program is not only going to contribute to energy security, but it will also assist to diversify our revenue streams and sustain our economy into the future. Plans are afoot to enter the gas economy market to better serve industrial demand in our province. In this regard, we'll be collaborating with the private sector through public-private partnership to build a gas import terminal, gas storage infrastructure, and gas distribution network here in Durban. This will support our developmental mandate, industrialization, and create new stream of revenue for our municipality. Director, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Honorable Enoch Godongwane to introduce tax incentives of a maximum of 15,000 rebate on new solar panels for residential generation, and businesses will be able to reduce their taxable income by 125% of the cost of investment in renewables. We must take advantage of this and seize the opportunity. We encourage businesses and households to take advantage of this initiative with the speed that it deserves. We are also encouraged by the State of the Province address, which was delivered by Honorable Premier last week, of establishing an energy war room to resolve the electricity crisis. We welcome this with warm hands and will fully participate as a city in the war room, Honorable Premier. We continue to work with the provincial government to take the work of the provincial energy task forward. We are also sharing best practices with other municipalities in the province to accelerate energy transition. In this regard, we also wish to thank our administration led by the city manager, the deputy city managers, the heads of departments who have put all this work together, and they are present today. They will be participating in different sessions to share the plans of our municipality with the delegates to this summit. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity and collective responsibility to build a more sustainable economy with secured energy supply. Therefore, this summit must find ways that will guarantee a cleaner and more sustainable energy mix for future generations. Let us work together and build energy security, not tomorrow, but now. I thank you. You are all welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, for a clear energy strategic roadmap that talks to the procurement of 2,600 megawatt, and believe that the budget is in the order of 324 billion rands. It's time for me to call on the stage MEC Duma, MEC of Etia, to give us a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director, for affording me this opportunity. Greetings to your good self, Ngolanyama. Greetings, Honorable Premier Nzwagele. Thank you for gracing our shows. His Worship, the Mayor, Baba Mbimbi, fellow panelists present, the Deputy Mayor, Tumbeza Kamieni, the Councillor who's responsible for economic development of eThekwini. Let us also greet the Ambassador, DECO Ambassador H.E. Anil Suklal, who's our midst. We glad the Mayoral Committee, House of Traditional Leadership, Representative, all distinguished guests. I'm no longer just going to elevate all the graphic details that I was going to do because I will just highlight some of the fundamentals, then introduce our Honorable Premier. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of this summit for an opportunity to address a critical matter of energy, especially when the country is faced with load shedding, which does not only pose a threat to our economy, but also to our livelihood as a nation and province of KwaZulu-Natal. The rolling blackouts adversely impact on food security, affect the issue of mobile networks, business sector, and industries, and has created conducive environment for crime. When it is dark, we all know what happens. A criminal finds it opportune to engage in robberies and other criminal acts which are destroying our communities and consequently deterring investors from investing in our province. State SA reported that the country's GDP decreased by 0.7% in second quarter of 2022, much of which was attributed to load shedding, which hobbled economic output, and the Premier highlighted some of the strategic intervention that is going to address the issue of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. My task is to share the perspective of the province on this prevailing problem and our posture towards just transition, a paradigm whose main thrust is to reduce the negative impact of the workers and communities as we transition to zero carbon economy. We heard you, Program Director, you spoke on the issue of coal. I think it is critical for this conference as well, even when we debate on commission, those who are promoting the usage of the mineral deposit called coal in South Africa today are being labeled as coal fundamentalists. I think we must demystify that myth because coal is what we have as a country, and we don't even characterize those who are promoting renewable as fundamentalists. It is an incorrect picture that must be outlined. And the research shows that almost for the next 200 years, we'll have this coal as the province, as the South Africa, as a country, and almost in the entire diaspora. So it means that let us make sure that we utilize the strength. If there is a need for new technology that is going to purify our anthracite, so be it. That's the best option. As the province of KZN, we have the firm view that transition should provide an opportunity process that ensure that you don't leave workers behind. Make sure that the issue of skills transfer is guaranteed. Make sure that there is created opportunity for people who are residing in the country and at the level of hegemonic ground, because provinces like Mpumalanga province will become a ghost province if you'll have to say that you don't take coal anymore. It's the same with some areas in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, so it still means that there is a need for this. Most of the people, especially the township and rural areas, depend solely on coal, and it will be responsible for us to get rid of this commodity, which has proven to be benefit to some of the developed countries. Countries such as Germany, I'm sure you know, because we're dealing with experts today, is that we only have 19 power plants as a country in South Africa. We only contribute less than 2% when it comes to be emitting in the space. Yes, the ozone layer has been destroyed majority by the superpowers, by those who are very well developed. Take China, for instance, today. Take America. China alone has more than 1,200 power plants based on coal as a base load. Yet they have commissioned new 250 in the last month. So it means that they are still going to proceed. Yes, we are not saying that let us proceed solely on coal. There is a need for gas. That is why in Richards Bay, we are currently embarking on that strategy. That is why in Durban, we are also doing the same. That is why in other cities that will rely on the strength of our sun, the solar system. That is why we are going to rely on the strength of wind in some instances. But we must be versatile enough in ensuring that we don't lose the essence of what we have as a country. Those who use N2 can attest to the number of trucks and road driving towards Richards Bay Port as the price of coal has increased exponentially, which is approximately $152 US per ton, which is approximately 3,000 per ton. This has come down from close to 10,000 per ton. This tells us that coal is prime commodity, which should guard and protect if we want to remain competitive in the world. As I articulate our view on this matter, I think it will be critical that I quote from US Sustainable Development Goal number 7 of SDGs, whose focus is on affordable and clean energy, which is concerned with ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. It says, I quote, it says that lack of access to energy suppliers and transformation system is a constraint to human and economic development, close quote. With just less than 7 years remaining towards achieving sustainable development goals, that is, all sectors of society, are expected to move with speed in actioning measures aimed at meeting this goal. I'm sure you know already that in the world, the global village, they are saying that if you don't produce electric vehicles by 2032, you are no longer guaranteed the market. Unfortunately, we live in the world like that, so we must also follow that process. In the context of our country, South Africa, and in particular our province of KwaZulu-Natal, on 31st August 22, Cabinet adopted a just transition framework, which outlines a shared vision for shifting to an equitable, zero-carbon economy and identified policy areas, principles necessary to achieve the said processes. There are some graphs that I was going to share in the future, which is critical so that we know, but for the interest of time, we're no longer going to dwell so much on those. It is our climate change responses and long-term just transition to a climate resilient and low-carbon economy in society. However, this will not be realized unless a dedicated effort is made to decisively deal with challenges related to access to modern electricity. And there's a solution ensuring that everyone has access to such clean, affordable, and reliable modern energy. One is encouraged by the fact that there are programs and plans in place to manage just transition, such as the Integrated Resource Plan, which the Premier also highlighted in the State of the Provincial Address last week, under the auspices of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. The plan clearly spells out the envisaged approach to energy mix for the country, which propagates for slowly ensure minimizing reliance on fossil fuel-based electricity in a responsible manner whilst promoting other sources of energy. What is even more encouraging from this plan is that the fact it further encourages development of cross-border infrastructure for the regional energy trading among southern developmental countries, focusing on the issue of hydropower. Notable, the plan also provides the distribution generation which aims at diversifying supply base, hence also providing for the distribution of generation in other areas embedded within municipal distribution networks. Program Director, what is worth mentioning is that our city has been pioneering some of the technologies as spelled out in the plan, making use of available resources to be added onto the metro generation mix. Already the Mayor has spoken about the plan, which is critical, and it must be adopted and supported as well. It is our belief that this summit is now aimed at getting the ball rolling in turning these energy strategies into practical actions. It is therefore encouraging that the short-term outcomes highlighted in the plan, once achieved, will contribute in diversifying the economy and further create more jobs, which is what the current conditions of our country are largely calling for. We would like to, therefore, to confirm our firm support and cooperation as the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs to the Metro in ensuring that these strategies and plans are materialized. I wish all the best in your deliberations for the next 2 days, and we are looking forward to the resolution that will help us resolve on the comprehensive, holistic approach which is going to ensure that Africans, blacks in general, are at the center of ensuring, because when this is convicted, it must yield a partial report. Thank you so much, Program Director. Oh, thank you so much, Program Director. I think Premier hails from this province of KwaZulu-Natal, in particular in Durban. She was born at KwaMashu. She has served as a councillor in eThekwini. She has served as a speaker. She has served as the ambassador. She has served in different portfolios. She has been MEC Cocta, MEC Treasurer, MEC Etia. She is currently the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. Let us give you and give her a huge round of applause. No Musa, Ngobe, Dube, Sis Q. The platform is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Tombini. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me observe, and acknowledge the presence of you, co-chair of the KZN Growth Coalition, Mr. Dembe, the leader of government business, MEC Economic Development and Tourism and Environmental Affairs, MEC Duma, our host mayor of the Metro of eThekwini, Councillor Mxolisi Kaunda, as well as the Deputy Mayor of eThekwini Municipality. I also wish to acknowledge the presence of the members of the executive of eThekwini, all councillors, the ambassador at large of BRICS, but also a Sherpa for our BRICS and IPSA countries, Ambassador Suklal and Mrs. Ambassador Suklal present here this morning for the summit. I do wish to acknowledge the presence of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, CEO and other members and president of the Chamber of Commerce of Durban and other chambers in KwaZulu-Natal, the captains of industry, as well as the experts in the field of energy, the municipal officials of both the province and the national government. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Good morning. Ngibonile ukuthi mayinibingelela noma yakhawunda ngathi kuthulekile kucishile ibani. I do wish to start by commending eThekwini Metro for the vision of convening this Energy Transformation Summit in order for all of us to tackle one of the most important and critical challenges of our generation, which is the energy security crisis that we are facing as a country, but also as the people of KwaZulu-Natal. The summit comes at an opportune time. A few days ago, we presented the State of the Province address, which took place in Pietermaritzburg, where we made a number of pronouncements regarding the key priority areas of our province of KwaZulu-Natal. But one of the most important pronouncements that we made was the approach to the current energy crisis and our thoughts of what KwaZulu-Natal should be doing to assist the country in its bid to address this challenge. Ahead of the State of the Province address, His Excellency, our President Ramaphosa, announced the state of emergency on the energy crisis in South Africa. The Minister in the Cabinet on the 27th of February, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Minister Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, in terms of Section 3 and 27.2 of the disaster, gazetted the disaster management regulations on the electricity constraints and the impact of severe electricity supply constraint in our country and to the society. Amongst others, these regulations are aimed at assisting us in energy generating, as well as the energy generating entities, to restore their capacity to generate electricity and provide for an array of measures to protect and provide relief to public, as well as dealing with the effects of the disaster that we are facing as we are facing the energy crisis. The regulations call for government institutions, amongst others, to adopt an energy-saving measures of the disaster and to prevent the escalation of the electricity supply shortage. These regulations also call for the continuous operations of some of the essential services in our country as well as in our provinces, such as the health facilities, the water infrastructure, and other specified essential services. This is also going to be done in the installation of the energy sources and other measures that is going to be providing uninterrupted power. So in addition, where it is technically possible, The Gazette also talks about the essential infrastructure which will be exempted from load shedding. Under this Disaster Management Act regulations, processes also are going to be streamlined in the decision on the energy generation projects, which means that many of you here who are energy experts, but also the users, the processes such as the shortening of the environmental authorization, waste management licenses, atmospheric emission licenses and condemnations, and the exemptions associated with the energy infrastructure generation, all of those will be shortened as opposed to what is happening at the moment. So is the transmission and distribution facilities for the duration of this national disaster period. So these are all the measures that are provided now by the regulation, which makes now practical for the state of disaster that was announced by the President to take effect. The regulations also talks about the sale of electricity generation by individuals, organs of states, and the provinces, as well as the licensed distributors, as defined by the Electricity Regulation Act of 2006, which is Act number 4. The state of disaster also provides that water boards and municipalities need to review their operational levels in terms of their reservoirs, water treatment plants, the scheduling and the maximization of the treatment while we have electricity at the time, or while electricity is available. We really welcome the announcement of these emergency measures, but also the procedures, which will also see the Auditor General doing the real-time auditing of all emergency procurements in order for us to avoid any corruption and mismanagement as a result of those emergency procurements that might need to be done. We also welcome the regulations because they also deal with some of the areas that many of us have been worried about, such as the exemption of health infrastructure, such as hospitals and major clinics, police stations, including the military health facilities, the water infrastructure, including the water treatment plants, the rail and ports infrastructure, the food production and food facilities, which is another very important area of exemption, which will see us averting many food security, but also the increase in the food prices as a result of the shortage of the energy. Critical as well to those exemptions will be the critical electronic and communications and broadcasting infrastructure, which is another area of importance to all of us, as you would know that in many instances when you have these electricity shortages or load shedding, many of our communication infrastructure is down. So with those regulations now, we're going to see many of these essential infrastructures being excluded from these load shedding. So as we converge here, ladies and gentlemen, to redefine the role or our map, how do we map the way forward in terms of ensuring that many of your businesses, many of our work does not get disrupted as we are facing this disaster. But also, we will be looking at what role do we play in part in resolving these challenges of our modern times as we continue to expand the services to the citizens while also delivering on the promises of a better life, particularly to those people that do not even have electricity. You're talking about the electricity shortages, but there is still the majority of the people who still do not have access to that electricity. So as we respond to these questions through the experts' knowledge of our social partners, we cannot do so without taking note of the technological advances that are happening within the sector. We know that the cost of rolling power shortages or these power cuts have really reduced even more the GDP by 1 to 1.3% annually since even 2000, as it is estimated by Quinton Bettenshaw in his executive analysis. Bettenshaw also argues that had load shedding never occurred, the country's economy could be heavy larger today if it was not for this load shedding. So the consequences of the load shedding and the impact of the growth in the outlook of our economy, even in the star of finance, Minister Godongwane mentioned in his budget speech that the electricity shortage and the crisis is really presenting something which is not impressive for our country, but also for the insecurity of the energy supply. Also, when you look at many of the articles that have been published, they indicate that this energy crisis has resulted to the cost to the economy of more than 1 billion. And this is something that is very serious for us as a country because we could not afford any disturbance to the economy that we are still very much trying to revive post-COVID, post-disasters of floods, post-unrest that we've experienced, particularly as this province. The governor of the Reserve Bank, Mr. Kganyago, predicts that the economic growth is also going to dwindle with this problem of energy. And without the power outages, South Africa's growth would have been at 2.3. Now the projections downwards that have been made is one that range from 0.3 to about 1% growth, which is really something that is going to have a huge consequence to the growth of our economy, but also to the very much needed investments and jobs that we are trying to create as a country. The second dichotomy relates to the fact that the calls for the reduction of electricity use with the aim of reducing consumption and the reliance on government will also severely affect the revenue of municipalities, as we know that many municipalities derive the majority or maximum of their income from the bulk municipal selling of the municipal electricity, as they get their revenue from reselling the electricity. So the current really crisis that we are facing is not just the crisis of economy, the crisis of all the shortages and the growth in the investment, but also it's going to be talking to the amount of money that we're going to be able to master as municipalities for us to be able to roll the infrastructure that is needed for development, but also it will also cripple the fiscus of the municipality, which again will minimize the investment that the municipalities themselves can make, either through those rates, but also looking at the whole fiscus of municipalities. And if we look at the effects of this to municipal revenue, the switch, therefore, again, to alternative energy has got, again, a potential of bringing that negative impact to the revenue of municipality. Because, again, with the switch to other alternative sources, it creates disruptions in the rare positive that we are looking at, but on the other side, in terms of the revenue base of the municipality, but also the muscle of the municipality, even to be able to attract loans, is going to be impacted by the situation that we are facing. So the transformation must really, for us, go beyond just the change from carbon to green energies, but also it must be to bring a meaningful transformation for the majority of the industry users, but also for all of us in the country. And I'm glad that MEC Mtombeni is bringing this element of coal, which is something for us that is very dear. And we really need to ensure, as we know that the coal that we have can last us, for many, many years to come, but also keeping our lights on, as we know. Because this coal is our own endowment, and it creates really about 80% of South Africa's energy currently. And if you were to think that if we are to decrease this coal, what does it mean for the 80% energy that we are already getting from the coal? So we need then to be really, be careful at what do we do and how we do it as we move towards other alternative energy sources. In our African continent, we chair, as the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, we chair what is called the Under 2 Coalition Against the Climate Change. And we had set up the Climate Change Council at addressing the impact of climate crisis. But what we always stress there as well is that we should underline the fact that Africa as a continent is not the worst or the biggest emitters compared to other developed countries, particularly even those that come and invest in the African continent. So for us, the long-term solution to our energy need elsewhere is ultimately the transition to looking at other alternative sources without being blindsided by what it is that is our core that generates the majority of our electricity as it stands. So chief amongst the alternatives, of course, is the solar. As we receive more than 2,500 hours of sunlight here, even in KwaZulu-Natal as an average, around, you can see that the solar radiant could thus bring a prime location and a prime distribution of energy developments if we were to harvest that more than 2,000 hours of sunlight that we, at the moment, we are having. In addition, as KwaZulu-Natal, again, the wind and hydropower, which are a viable alternative solar, is again another more sustainable and potentially, which could be, again, harvested at the large scale with the potential of reducing even both water use and the carbon emissions if you were to look at the numbers of the energy that we can also get from the hydropower. In addition, South Africa's wind resources are also regarded as amongst the top 5 in the world and could sustain about 25% of our capacity grid. But furthermore, it is estimated that by 2020, the price of the wind and solar PV will be at least 50 cent kilowatts, unlike what Medupi Power Station is selling at the moment or is producing at the moment once completed, which will be close to about 1.10 rand per kilowatt. Now, if you look at that compared to the 50 kilowatts of PV, and it again tells you that there is the potential again to regain some savings from such use of those alternatives. We are fortunate that in KwaZulu-Natal, Eskom is developing the biggest battery storage facility, which is going to be based in Elandskop, which is called the BES project, BEES project, which is a battery storage, distribution storage plant, which will give us another more than 199 megawatts once it is completed. It's got that capacity. but also the capacity on its own, the storage of the battery can give us about 833 megawatts per hour, which tells you that with that storage, it could even power even the medium-sized municipality for about 4 hours if there was a load shedding. And therefore, again, telling us that we should be looking at such alternatives so that we boost again our capacity using those examples such as this largest BES project, which is going to be implemented here in KwaZulu-Natal. The phase 2 of this installation would also further gives us another 144 megawatts storage capacity, and this will be able to give to the grid about 48 to the grid, but also it could be supplied even to other users. And I think this is something we all are looking forward to its commissioning, which is scheduled for the 30th of June 2023, with the phase 3 of it being completed by 2024 in December. As part of our work on transition towards the low carbon economy, there is a need for us to really look at the option, but also to think about the localization, because this is one area that as all of these alternatives are being explored, there will be a need for the installations, there will be a need for supply of solar water heaters, the heat pumps, the solar energy, the other biogas and biomass and biofuels, all of these and the industrial symbiosis, also looking at the circular economy. All of these factors are things that we should really be ensuring that there is localization, but also local industry does benefit from such opportunities that will be created by this alternative. The mayor spoke about the KZN Energy War Room that we are establishing, and we're really looking forward to many of you in the industry participating in order for us to provide lasting solutions to our province and as well as our economy. We are also exploring intervention in the use of alternative energy sources, including looking at the ocean's energy that could also give us more energy. I was talking to my ambassador about some of the relations that we have with our BRICS countries and IPSA countries that could also share with us some of the technologies when it even comes to biogas, hydrogen, as well as other sources of energy, particularly looking at our sugarcane, as we are also endowed with the sugarcane as KwaZulu-Natal. So for us, eThekwini Municipality, as it has taken this lead in generating the plans that are going to be also assisting us as eThekwini, we are really happy that we were able, as the Executive Council, to assist in fast-tracking this policy for eThekwini to enable the Metro to steam ahead with the reliable energy security options, including sourcing from the independent. In 2019, when we looked at the research papers titled Assessment of Renewable Energy Potential in KwaZulu-Natal, that paper that was written at the time, Mark Alain, at the Center of Development of Green Technology at Mangosuthu Technologies, also indicated that KZN has a huge potential in the renewable energy exploitation. As in the paper at the time, it indicated that we can generate about 45 gigawatts from solar, which is 74% as well as 99.51 of the wind energy. And these are some of the energy at the time and even now, including the biomass and the biogas that we are using in other communities. We started with this about, 10 years ago, using the biomass and biogas in many of the residents, particularly in the rural areas where we already started. And power the fridge, it powers the house, it makes you cook, as well as also give you charging even for a couple of days without having to refill that technology that we already installed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do wish to say that the time has come for all of us to rethink the future for us, the current load shedding crisis. The future that will just be beyond looking at only alternatives, but the future that will really be looking at a variety of blending that will make it possible for us to use every reliable but also lines that we all need to we used to be reliant on. And we'll recall that half of those mobile phones at the time were from Nokia. But there's been many disruptions since that time. As we have seen the Nokia CEO, that he recorded that in his last speech, that the company with the words, "We don't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." And that is how the CEO of Nokia summarized that growth Nokia experienced at the beginning of the disruption of the mobile phones, and at the time now when the value chain and other users have come into the stream. And I think the lessons that we are learning from this tragedy that befalls those who do not have the courage to change is that the disruptions are something that we cannot avoid. But also, we need to have the courage and the foresight to adapt to the new situations that face us as humans. So, as KwaZulu-Natal, we must not miss out on this opportunity that is being brought by this crisis, but rather we need to learn to change, we need to adapt so that the energy crisis, we need to solve these problems of the current load shedding and ensure that our economy and our architect of our growth does get back to speed. Municipalities must also imagine that it is possible that the cities where your residents are powered by battery solar will be something of a daily occurrence, or will be something that we have to live with, as electricity is a major source of revenue. So we need to understand as municipalities what it means and how are we going to survive as these disruptions of alternative energies come to the mainstream. Our bylaws as well as municipalities and policies and other legislation also need to change to adapt to this energy revolution that we are talking about. How ready are we as SMMEs to benefit from the economic value chain is something that I'm hoping that this conference and summit is going to be focusing on. We need our mindset to catch up with the real time, and I'm hoping that we are all going to be at the emergency time and less talk and more decisive actions as we look forward to the resolutions of the summit, but also as we look forward to building behind us, looking at that silver lining that is presented by the crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, we will solve the energy crisis, the current crisis, while we usher in a better economic future, a sustainable development that has got a clean energy that will ensure that the energy security of our province and as well as that one of our country is guaranteed, and so is our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier. Keeping coal and gas as part of the energy mix seems to be a theme that is coming out strong. Of course, we are also putting a lot of energy on the transition to renewables over a period of time. And speakers indicate that CO2 emissions is a challenge that can be mitigated by technology. We running against time. At this point in time, allow me to call on stage Executive Chairman N.J. Ayuk of African Energy Chamber. He is going to be speaking on energy security and sustainable economic benefits. Could we please give him a big, big round of applause?
Good morning. I'm very happy I don't have to do the protocols they left. I don't know how to do it. It's just easy to say all protocols observed and then you move forward. It is such a magnificent opportunity to be in Durban, and I was on my way here, and a very nice journalist asked me, "Why are you going to Durban?" I said it was in South Africa, so I could go. He said, "You're going to take that your fossil fuel message up there. We don't want you there." I said, I didn't think they stopped us from going anywhere. But this city has been so welcoming to me, my delegation. I just want to thank the organizers for putting together such a great event in this city at a time that it needs it. Full house, packed house, put it together for yourself. It's so beautiful to have these kind of discussions in KwaZulu-Natal, as someone who comes from the oil and gas industry. We have always talked a lot about the Durban corridor. And I think that Durban corridor, it's one of the most underused, underexplored path when you have to develop energy. And I'm very happy to hear a lot of us talking about a transition and where we are with load shedding and blackouts. We need energy addition. That's what we need. And that energy addition comes from what I sum it up with we look at the entire African continent and South Africa. 600 million people without access to electricity in the entire African continent, 900 million without access to clean cooking, most of them women. You have to deal with that issue. So climate change and energy poverty are two sides of the same coin, and you have to address them at the same time, and this is not the time to back out from your energy resources that you have. Of course, we have to look at how we deal with the energy industry. Energy security is so important because you can't love jobs and hate those who create jobs. So we have to have that energy to drive up jobs, to drive up manufacturing, to create opportunity. I come from a small country called Cameroon, and I've led the African Energy Chamber over the last 5 years, and one of the biggest things we've seen which has become this issue around energy growth and energy security. And it's not just an African problem. It is a South African problem. This is Africa's most industrialized economy. Yes, do we have to look at energy transitions? Of course we have to. Nobody loves the environment more than we do. Do not back down from taking on that path where people tell you you don't love the environment because you want to use coal or oil or natural gas to power your economy. Folks, that is wrong. That is wrong. And as you debate your issues in this conference, you must defend your resources. South Africa and the entire African continent, 2.75 greenhouse gas emissions. 2.7%. Global Carbon Atlas. And you've been told that you are the enemy of the environment and you are the enemy of the earth. No, I don't believe that. And we must not take a backseat on this issue. But also, we have to also recognize that you can't decarbonize what is not carbonized. Do you realize that I've been part of COP for the last 5 years, and we've been told a lot when we see the blackouts. I love South Africa. You guys have a fancy word for it. You just call it load shedding. So I walk in here like load shedding. What is load shedding? Like we shed. It's a fancy, nice word. I love it. But I just call it blackouts. If you have blackouts, and even those who have lights, it's not normal. It's not constant. You need base load. Because the intermittent nature of it affects our security. When there became a crisis in Ukraine and Russia, Germany moved forward to what did they do? They went out for coal. They went to build LNG terminals. I'm very happy with the Premier talking about building an LNG terminal here because most of the time South Africans ask me, we need natural gas in South Africa, but you have no LNG terminal. That would give you the chance to receive LNG and really move on gas to power programs and power your communities. And I keep saying that I always go into COP and and I've been very lucky to see the South African delegations. It was last year with the head of state. And one of the key things that came up in Glasgow before going into Sharm el-Sheikh, all these pledges. I don't know if I like to watch CNN sometimes. They had all these global leaders. They had these things they call private jets. They flew 400 of them right into Glasgow, and everybody was happy. And they had all these nice pledges on how we're going to cut everything. 2 months later, Norway gave 50 oil licenses. The United States opened all federal lands for drilling. Germany moved on LNG terminals and opened coal power plants. The UK opened one of its first licenses in 30 years, first coal mines in 30 years and opened more licenses. And then they turn to you and they tell you, well, we'll give you a little bit of aid, leave everything in the ground. No, don't. Don't. This is not the time to leave it in the ground. This is not the time because the wealthy nations, they need to decarbonize. You need to industrialize. You can't leave it in the ground. We're in a state of disaster in South Africa. What it means is that you get a young man who can't get a job, we can't go to school, we can't read, we can't set up ambitions. But then the one thing that we've been asked to do is to back out of energy that has driven human civilization, created so much opportunity, extended life expectancy, built nations into something that is never. Of course, we got to looking at low carbon economies, but we still have a way to go. But we also have a job to do, and I feel bad now that the Premier is gone because we need an enabling environment. It is just the way it's going to work. You're going to have to embrace a lot of free market practices to drive that. This is no time for resource nationalism. We're going to have to look at the right kind of incentives. Those incentives that are going to drive power generation, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, they are important. Cut out those red tapes. And I think everybody's watching what South Africa is looking at right now with the state of disaster. Are we going to cut red tapes? Are we going to fast-track developments of energy? Sometimes it's always good to look at what others have done. During a crisis, you move. We move. That's what we need in KwaZulu-Natal. We need to move on energy because jobs need to be created. Young people are watching us. Get around, some of them stop me in the airport. I don't know if they need $1 or they just want to slap me. But we got to pay attention to where we are. Security of energy, looking at the future, driving our economies, comes with how we integrate young people in the process. And I'm very happy when I came in here, some young people I met, bright young people are trying to look at energy. We need to be able to look at them and say, come from the back, come sit on my table. Come eat on my table. It is important. And how we bring in young people and women, especially in energy. Women are still the last hired and the first fired in the energy industry. That's a shame, folks. We got to fix it. We got to look at the mirror and fix this. I look at the mirror every day. I do. But mirrors are not just to reflect what you see. Mirrors are to correct what you see. So we can't just be mirrored images to where we stand with women in energy. We have to walk the walk. We have to walk the talk. We have to do something. Our industry, and if you talk about this just energy transition, that's why sometimes I get attacked all the time by virus. I don't mind. When you do this job, you have to be ready to take it. If you don't have a thick skin, get out of the kitchen. But ESG is not just about the environment. There's another word called the social and the governance. And if we go on the environment and we stop, and even the environment, nobody loves the environment more than we do, but the social and the governance is so critical in the transformation of our society and our economies, and that is what we want to look at. We need to look at everything. It's both. I'm going to close with this. We also have to look at solutions, and those solutions sometimes, we got to step forward. We got to look at free markets. We got to look at limited governments. But don't play victim. We are not victims. We got to be people that turn around and create solutions. Solutions that drives us forward. One of the biggest problems you have right now in KwaZulu-Natal, in this city, in South Africa, all of Africa, is the financing of energy. There is a finance gap when it comes to energy. Less than 2% of renewable energy investment is being made in Africa. Less than 2%. Most African countries were looking at it, said, well, they will give you these big old funds on climate mitigation. I believe more in adaptation, but they promised you $100 billion. It never came. I don't think it will come. I think you're wasting your time. You need to find a way to get that out. But then we also look at what Afro-Exim Bank and others are putting out. We have $2.4 trillion in private capital in Africa. There is no reason why city, province, states, countries, private sector cannot work to rally up private equity hedge funds and really close that finance gap, because you are on your own. Don't expect everybody to do it. I've been spending a lot of time in the UK, in Germany, talking with the funders. Do you realize we lobbied for a year and a half to get gas be seen into as green? But when Europe made gas green, what did they do to you? They said gas is green for Europe and nuclear is green for Europe, but not for you in Africa. So somebody can decide what is green energy. And we're going to finance gas for Europe, but we're not going to finance gas for Africa. And then, folks, I want you to think about a young man in this country or a young woman in this country who sees some people actually blocking oil or gas companies from drilling or from developing some massive gas potential in South Africa. But when there is gas, when you cross the border in a country like Mozambique with no lights and nothing, and you see that gas going to power rich and wealthy people in Europe when you don't have anything to build urea, ammonia, NPK, fertilizer plants to drive up Africa's manufacturing powerhouse. That is wrong. You can't talk about a transition. You should be talking about a just energy transition. There has to be some justice in this transition. If it is not a just transition, we are going to face the mistakes in the past. And I know I'm going to shut up and stop if I get in trouble, but they always say, what do you do with an oil man? I still believe in oil and gas. I think it has a big role to play. I still believe in coal. I think it has a big role to play. I still believe in carbon capture technologies. But I also believe that it is also time we have to look at finding ways to finance and phase in renewables and super drive. It's not wrong to bring in renewables into our energy systems. We just have to make sure it is cost effective and we work on those technologies and we create that space. We can do this. It is possible in Africa. It is possible to drive that because jobs and young people and everyday Africans, everyday South Africans, and everyday citizens of this province and city, they're looking for us to be that group of people that changes directions of what we want to see. So I thank you so much for welcoming me. I've had some really good food in this city, and I'm not leaving without more food. So thank you so much, and I look forward to participating in more discussions. Bye-bye.
Very inspiring talk. Another round of applause. Thank you. Moment of glory to you, Prashin. Prashin is going to be giving us a talk on the impact of energy crisis on economic activity. President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce, a big, big round of applause. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Program Director, my colleague, Mr. Moses Tembe. Now I'm going to say all the protocols because people were here. The Honorable Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Ms. Nomsa Dube-Ncube, MEC for Etia, MEC Duma, His Worship the Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Mxolisi Koenda, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Myeni, Ambassador for Asia and BRICS, Ambassador His Excellency Anil Suklal, the Executive Chairman of Africa Energy Chamber, Mr. Ayuk, the CEO of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ms. Palesa Pili, members of the business community, members of the media, industry experts presented here today, sons and daughters of Mother Africa, allow me to stand on all protocols observed. A warm and heartfelt good morning. I'm not sure if it's still morning. A good day to all of you. Thank you for allowing us as the business community of eThekwini, represented by myself as the President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to address you today. I think I speak for all of us when I say the past year has indeed been a tough one for all of us. We have seen a loss of life, of homes, and businesses. Our city now more than ever is in a state where it needs all of us to pull together as a united, patriotic movement of citizens. With the current critical state of our infrastructure, we need to gather our resources and expertise and work as a patriotic collective in a collaborative and cooperative manner to save our city from complete collapse. It is indeed futile to play the blame game. Whilst prepping for my notes for today's address, I made a list of the pros and the cons of where we are right now as a business community in the city of eThekwini. It would be disingenuous of me to say that my list was more positive than negative. However, I posed a question to myself. How can we turn this list around? What would it take to change our current situation and firmly position our city on a path of growth that it so richly deserves and, more importantly, desperately needed? The first step to recovery is acknowledging the problem and the actions that are required to address the problems. This requires frank, robust, and honest admissions by all parties concerned. But more importantly, it requires us to have trust in one another. I have previously said we need to reduce the trust deficit between the public and private sectors. So let's look at our current crisis and how it's affecting the business community. As the business community, represented by the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we acknowledge that South Africa is in a dire state because of the energy crisis, as in economic activity. I suspect it may be more. This, combined with higher electricity prices and high interest rates, has put both business and consumers under extreme pressure. As organized business, we believe the energy crisis is worsening in South Africa. According to the recent budget speech by the Minister of Finance, record levels of load sheddings were experienced in 2022, 207 days of load shedding compared to 75 days in 2021. This, we must all agree, is unacceptably high. If we continue on this trajectory, not only will more companies go out of business and cease to exist, but we will have no city to conduct business in. Surely there needs to be a change. One cannot do the old thing and expect new results. That's the height of insanity. There are four fundamental problems to solve, in our opinion, that are impacting on the distribution of electricity by the eThekwini. And we must differentiate eThekwini's role, the municipality's role. It's currently not a generator of energy. It is a distributor of energy. So you can have all the energy in the world, but if the eThekwini municipality cannot distribute it, doesn't take away the load shedding problem. So number one, what are our four fundamental problems? Aged equipment. Many of the substations, transformers, and other distribution networks were installed in the 70s and 80s and have not been upgraded to cope with the current demand. Lack of informed and scheduled preventative maintenance on the above distribution equipment. Number three, lack of timeous restoration and replacement of key equipment post the April 2022 flood damage. And number four, crime. This includes the theft of cables and deliberate sabotage of infrastructure. Any combination of the above four issues is putting strain and burden on the network, which is resulting in a firefighting approach of just. To compound matters, many of the large substations are left unattended or inadequately protected, allowing for the theft of cable and equipment. These are provincial key points. They need to be protected. So what is the impact on business? Many of the businesses involved in food supply and are dependent on electricity to sustain their operations. According to a recent article, constant outages are causing a massive destruction to the cold chain. If load shedding is not resolved, the risk of stores not stocking fresh produce remains high. Furthermore, it has the potential to lead to food security issues and increase costs to consumers. With frequent load shedding, we believe it creates uncertainty for farmers and producers of poultry, dairy, fruits, and vegetables. According to a recent article, Agri-SA highlighted that electricity is central to modern farming practices, and the recent increase in load shedding has seriously disrupted farming operations. The impact of load shedding is detrimental to small businesses. These businesses do not have adequate options and measures in place to withstand the impact of load shedding. The reality is that many SMMEs simply cannot afford to source alternative energy solutions such as generators, inverters, UPS devices, battery energy storage systems, etc., which will help them to mitigate the effects of load shedding. For most small businesses, both in the formal and informal sectors, the loss of productive time is crippling and places significant negative financial burden on their businesses as they lose thousands of rands with each and every instance of load shedding. In fact, the SMME sector in South Africa is facing an existential crisis, and this is not an exaggeration. So as a chamber, what is our focus? The Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry believes we need to focus on 3 areas to solve the energy crisis. The first thing is energy security. Government needs to work with private sector to guarantee the supply of energy to sustain business operations. And to do this, they need a hybrid of coal, gas, nuclear, and renewables, because we all talk about base load. Neither one of these on their own can guarantee a base load. Energy costs. The cost of energy needs to be significantly reduced in South Africa to promote economic growth and stimulate investment. Importantly, there needs to be a fair and equitable tariff for all electricity users. You find in South Africa, these tariffs are skewed. Lastly, number 3, energy emissions. Government needs to work with private sector to reduce the impact of energy emissions on the environment. As mentioned in the beginning of my address, our intention as a business community is to highlight the current issues, and in doing so, provide working solutions that will aid towards the rebuilding of infrastructure and the challenges it poses for business. So what is our solution? What are we proposing as a business community? Citizens don't need more grand plans and grand speeches. They require tangible actions that defines what needs to be done, by whom it needs to be done, by when it's going to be done, and most importantly, who is providing the budget? Is it going to be government? Is it going to be private sector? Or is it going to be a combination of both through public-private partnerships? As organized businesses, we stand ready, willing, and able to work with government through an organized and well-constructed public-private partnership. The business community is ready to mobilize our resources and build back better. Let's not waste this crisis. Let's build back better in an inclusive way that leaves no one behind. The solution is not complex. We suggest a 6-point plan of action. Number 1, develop by region a schematic map of the reticulation and cable networks and get a clear and concise understanding of the current condition. If we know how bad the situation is, we can prevent the continued firefighting approach and ad hoc interventionist approach. Number 2, based on the research and evaluation and above, let's develop a regional priority plan, because in certain regions you have lots of energy intensive users, and if we can address this situation, there'll be much more spare capacity for the residential. Develop detailed public-private partnerships with corporates who are willing to support the maintenance and upgrade of infrastructure. And practically, I'm referring to distribution. Amendment to regulations to support this. is not only necessary, to be honest, it's our only hope. Number 4, develop an energy crisis task team made up of both public and private sector participants. Number 5, very critical, through the TVET colleges and other educational institutes, we need to develop the future skills that is required to maintain energy stability. All the previous speakers spoke about a lot of things, but do we have the skills to maintain that network of energy? Lastly, develop stronger call center and other online support mechanisms so that consumers are kept abreast of the challenges and are literally not left in the dark. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, our request as a business community is that let us look at the solutions we have proposed. Let us work together with the public sector so we can start implementing these solutions. We don't wish to be pacified with diplomatic charm. No, take us seriously enough, and we can be an invaluable partner to government. The time to act is now. We are in a critical situation as a business community. We cannot allow our infrastructure, our businesses, and the economy of eThekwini before our very eyes. We need patriotic partnerships driven by a common desire to build a prosperous city for all its people. I thank you.
The President has spoken, President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm just clarifying here. The Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry remains the biggest chamber in Africa with over 3,000 members, and I truly would like to implore you, President, to spend more time with Mr. Ayuk, who leads a leading chamber of successful networks, transactions, and partnerships at the helm of Africa's growing energy industries. Well done, President. Thank you. Well, we are going to be calling on stage the Ambassador Anil Suklal is going to be giving us a talk on fostering partnerships with BRICS energy investors. A big, big round of applause.
Thank you, Program Director. Given that the stage has been depleted, all protocols observed. Colleagues, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come and share some thoughts on possible partnerships with BRICS countries in terms of addressing our energy challenge. This city, eThekwini, has a special relationship with BRICS. Because when we first were given the privilege to chair BRICS in 2013, we became a full member of BRICS in 2012, and in 2013 we assumed the chairship. We came to this city, this very venue, to host the first BRICS summit on African soil. And it was here in eThekwini that the decision was taken to develop the new development bank, the BRICS Bank, as we commonly refer to it. And it was also here that we took the decision to establish the BRICS Business Council, which is today a very important pillar of our BRICS cooperation. Now again in 2023, we are in the chair of BRICS, and later this year, our president will host the summit to which all of the BRICS leaders and other leaders from the African continent will be invited, like we did in 2013 when we had the summit, because the summit is not just about, and the chairship of BRICS is not just about South Africa, it's also a continent, and to see how we use our chairship of BRICS and our membership of BRICS in addressing the challenges that we face as a continent and using this partnership to forge mutually beneficial relationships. Now, why should we turn to BRICS? I recall in 2019, we were in Brasilia for the BRICS summit there, and after the summit, President Ramaphosa had a meeting with President Xi, and one of the issues he discussed in detail with President Xi was South Africa's energy challenges and whether China could look at assisting South Africa address its energy challenge. Now, I think there is no better country than India and China to assist us with our energy challenge. I say this because their energy journey, we were speaking earlier of power outages and blackout. Now, the first times I experienced a power outage or blackout was when I was traveling in India in the 1980s and 1990s in China. They would have very frequent power outages. I recall traveling the streets of Delhi at night, and there were no street lights, no robos working. And I would ask my colleagues, why is this the case? They would say, it's energy saving. We are energy deficient. How is it that these countries, both of them with a population of 1.4 billion each, over 1.4 billion, were able to overcome the energy challenges? You go to India today, you'll hardly ever experience power outage. In October last year, India announced that it is an energy surplus producing country. China has achieved that journey much earlier as well. And they are developing countries like us. Much has been said about coal. What powered the West? How did the Western G7 economies become global powerhouses, the leading economies of the world? It was coal. The Industrial Revolution was built on coal. But we are told today, don't look at coal. The point was made about Europe's energy crisis as a result of the Russia-Ukraine conflict that they are undergoing, and they are quietly unmothballing all of the power stations. Germany is in the present stage unmothballing 5 coal-fired power stations, very quietly returning to coal, while still pressurizing us to look at energy transition and renewables. Now, if you look at China, how did China's economy? I refer to the Industrial Revolution and the role it played in powering the economies of the North to becoming the dominant economies of the world. China became the second largest global economy dependent on coal. 80% of China's energy mix during its booming years of double-digit growth after the opening up of China under Deng Xiaoping in 1978, and you had double-digit growth for about 30 years to become the second largest global economy, an economy of $18 trillion today, on coal. How did India become the 5th largest economy at the end of last year, overtaking its former colonial master, the UK? In 2013, India was the 10th largest global economy. In 2022, it's the 5th largest global economy, and by 2032, it will be your 3rd largest global economy. What powered that Indian engine? It was coal. And we here in Africa, we are still dependent on fossil fuels for about 71% of our energy mix. And we must not be held hostage with a gun to our head. Yes, we want to transition. We will transition to clean energy. But we will do it at our pace in order to address growth, our industrialization, and lifting our people out of poverty. China could lift 800 million people out of poverty. They know what exploitation means, being colonized and marginalized and being raped of your wealth. These were the countries that experienced this. They've transitioned out of it. In that conversation in 2019 between President Xi and President Ramaphosa, President Xi pointed out that in the 1980s, their state entity, the equivalent of ESCOM, experienced precisely the same problems that our ESCOM is experiencing today. They had an energy crisis of mammoth proportions, but they laid out a blueprint and took some very hard decisions, which he explained to President Ramaphosa. And China was able to get out of those difficult, dark days, and today, as I say, a country of 1.4 billion energy surplus producing country. India went through the same journey. And if you look at the percentage of coal today, China still has 55% of its energy mix based on coal. But they have set a target that by 2025, at least 1/3 will be renewables, and just recently they have put out an update that at least 36% of the energy mix by 2025 will be renewables. India's energy mix, 46% of that is coal, 23% is oil, biomass is 21%. Russia, of course, as was pointed out, has the largest reserves of global gas, proven reserves, and the second largest exporter of gas. So oil and gas is the mainstay of Russia's energy mix. On the other hand, we have within the midst of the BRICS configuration, the example of Brazil. Some 85% of Brazil's energy mix is renewables. And I was relating earlier on to Premier that in 2003, exactly 20 years ago, we formed IBSA, the India-Brazil-South Africa Trilateral Cooperation. It's its 20th anniversary this year. And I recall that I led the first senior officials mission to Brazil in preparation for the ministerial. We were about 5 departments. What was then Foreign Affairs, now DIRCO, Agriculture, Energy, Science and Technology. And as part of our program, the Brazilians approached us and said they would like to include in our program a presentation on biomass and how it's transforming Brazil's energy mix. We had a presentation by the Brazilian authorities, and when we got out of that presentation, I related the story to my wife when I came back in 2003. My colleagues, fortunately both of them are no longer in government, they were DDGs like myself, from the Energy Department and Science and Technology, came out laughing. They said, this is nonsense technology they're trying to fob off onto us. This was in 2003, and today biomass makes up at least about 9% of Brazil's energy mix. How narrow-sighted we were 20 years ago when Brazil offered us for free this technology, and Premier spoke about biomass and especially KZN. So I'm saying that the BRICS countries provide us an opportunity in terms of looking at addressing some of the challenges we face. We cannot address these challenges alone. We have to do it in partnership, but we have to choose carefully the partners. Those that have traveled this journey, have the experience, and have the willingness to want to work with South Africa and the African continent to address our energy challenges. Now, of course, the BRICS countries are important for us also as our important trading partners. BRICS today accounts for 25% of global GDP. Now, in 2013, when we were preparing to host the summit, our two-way trade with BRICS was 340 billion rands. Last year, it was 888 billion rands, more than double in less than 10 years. One of our largest trading blocs today is the BRICS countries. So BRICS is not only important for us in terms of trade, but they are important technology partners for us. And I think I was saying to the Premier, I have traveled extensively to the BRICS countries on a regular basis, having been responsible for our BRICS file now for the past 12 years, that there is a genuine desire and willingness to partner South Africa. But I don't know why we as South Africans are so shy to ask for help. And Premier was asking me when I was explaining to her that these countries are willing to assist us. She asked, why don't we ask? I said, I don't understand. Because I'm constantly asked by my Chinese colleagues, Indian colleagues, how is it that we can help you? And for some reason, we seem not to ask. But unfortunately, at the Lekotla now in January, President Ramaphosa specifically said we should approach our BRICS partners to try and assist us address our energy challenges. Now, let me just perhaps reflect a bit on what we are doing within BRICS in terms of energy. The BRICS countries are uniquely positioned to support South Africa's energy recovery. The BRICS countries contain almost half the world's population and account for approximately 40% of the world's energy consumption. As BRICS, we are responsible for 48% of the world's coal consumption, 22% of the world's oil consumption, and 13.5% of natural gas consumption. While renewable energy consumption is only 16% at the moment, BRICS renewable energy consumption has been growing annually. Most BRICS members have committed to mitigating climate change and transiting to clean energy. But as I said, we will do it at our pace. BRICS countries are not only consumers of energy, as all members have substantial fossil fuels and available renewable energy resources. BRICS members account for 40% of the world's coal reserve, 25% of the world's natural gas reserve, and 8% of the world's oil reserve. In the renewable sector, solar power from South Africa, Brazil, and India, wind power from Russia and China, as well as biomass from Brazil, all enjoy substantial resource advantages. Within BRICS, China is the world's largest coal producer with 50% of the world output in 2020 and India 10%. Russia produced 12% of the world's oil and 16% of the world's natural gas. Brazil is rich in biomass energy and its output for 25% of the world's total biomass energy in 2020. Brazil's major source of energy is hydro, accounting for about 55%. With our natural resources, BRICS countries are major role players in the global supply of energy and its dynamics. BRICS countries have developed similar energy policies to manage energy risks. That's why I'm saying they are natural partners for us. BRICS countries have both expertise and technology to use their energy resources to enhance energy security and cooperation. BRICS recognizes these complementarities, and in 2020, BRICS adopted a roadmap for BRICS energy cooperation up to 2025, aimed at building a strategic partnership in energy cooperation. The roadmap is being implemented in phases. This is the research phase, which started under South Africa's chairship of BRICS in 2018, with the establishment of the BRICS Energy Research Cooperation Platform. The platform brings together experts, companies, and research institutes to coordinate common interests of BRICS in research and development of innovative technology and policies, with 7 studies being released to date at BRICS Ministers of Energy meetings. Last year, China presented an additional study on the development of renewable energy and smart grids in the BRICS countries. This year, Russia is leading a study on energy security. The roadmap also established the publication of the annual BRICS Energy Report, which we release annually. During the second phase, BRICS countries will identify the needs and challenges to energy security and find areas where BRICS cooperation can provide solutions. The third phase aims at advancing mutually beneficial cooperation, including exchange of best practices, use of BRICS advanced technology, as well as opportunities for trade and investment in each other's economies. Of course, we are not waiting for this third phase before we work with our BRICS partners on energy solutions. India is already South Africa and brings in almost half of our total coal revenue. China is reopening opportunities for imports from South Africa following its political fallout with Australia, previously an important coal source of China. The political tension in Australia these past few years has actually worked to our benefit. China is our largest trading partner. Trade with China last year was over 600 billion rands. And if you think back, this year is only 25 years since we established formal diplomatic relations with China. Because the previous regime had relations with Taiwan, we had to first undo that relationship, and it was only on the 1st of January 1998 that we established formal diplomatic relations. I recall when I became head of the China section in the Department of Foreign Affairs in 2000, our trade with China was not even 1 billion rands. Today it's 614 billion rands. Part of South Africa's response to the energy crisis involves implementing a just transition to a low-carbon economy. Climate change poses its own risks and constraints of economic growth in South Africa. We are among the most water-scarce countries in the world, and recent events here in KwaZulu-Natal have shown that extreme weather events such as floods are occurring. South Africa's just transition aims to significantly lower emissions of greenhouse gases and harness investments in new energy technologies, electric vehicles, and energy-efficient appliances. During South Africa's chairship of BRICS in 2013, we established the BRICS Business Council to strengthen and promote economic, trade, business, and investment ties amongst the business communities of the BRICS countries. The BRICS Business Council also identified problems and bottlenecks and recommend solutions to BRICS. This year, under South Africa's chairship, the BRICS Business Council Energy and Green Economy Working Group is focused on concrete outputs on the just transition. The Council has developed an energy skills roadmap for South Africa, which will be rolled out to other BRICS countries. The skills roadmap identified the skills available as well as the skills necessary and identified training programs as well as sponsors across the BRICS countries. There are discussions on the possible establishment of a BRICS African Center of Excellence on the just energy transition. Actually, this will be established this year. It's quite advanced, and these are one of our key priorities of our chairship this year, to establish the BRICS African Center of Excellence on just energy transition, which would support a network of researchers focused on technology, socio-economic, environmental, financial, and other aspects of the just transition that would inform policymakers in BRICS, as well as here in Africa, in collaboration with the BRICS Energy Research Cooperation Platform that we established in 2018. The question was raised earlier on how to identify funding for investment in renewable energy. India and China are able to source their own international finance for renewable energy by offering their own currency, green bonds known as the green masala bonds and the green panda bonds. Of course, being in Durban, everyone knows about masala. The green panda bond is issued by the New Development Bank. And this bond is in its second edition now, and each time it has been oversubscribed. The first time it was subscribed to over 30 billion renminbi. The New Development Bank that I spoke of, established by BRICS countries, was established to mobilize resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects. Sustainability is fundamental to the founding principles of the NDB, and the bank aims to deliver transformative impact to BRICS member countries with a target of 40% of all the bank's loan funding projects, mitigation and adaptation for the effects of climate change by 2026. And what is also interesting, in its 5-year plan released in October last year, at least 1/3 of lending will be in local currency. So we don't have to borrow in dollar and then convert into our local currency and thereby lose value of the amount that we lend. So this is another important development of trading in our local currency and recognizing our currencies. We have already signed agreements in this regard. South Africa and China have so far been the leading beneficiaries of sustainable financing from the NDB with respect to clean and renewable energy. South Africa is the beneficiary of 12 projects financed so far by the NDB to the value of $5.4 billion. 5 of these 12 projects support the energy sector, with 3 of those funding renewable energy projects to the value of 13 billion rands. Now, this is not known, that the NDB that we created less than 10 years ago, this bank is only 7 or 8 years, but is a significant lender to us today. We don't have to go to the World Bank or the IMF. We can go to our own bank. This bank was created with capital we put in as the 5 countries. And today, some 5.4 billion has been allocated to over 12 projects in South Africa, including in the energy sector and including to Eskom. The opportunities for BRICS to support transformative change in our economy are obvious. As chair of BRICS in 2023, our strategic vision is to harness our existing to address issues of national interest and national concern in a multidisciplinary way. The depth and strength of our BRICS partnership allows us to bring multiple BRICS solutions to the table, including financing, trade, investment, industrialization, skills development and training, research, development and innovation, as well as partnership with our fellow African countries and leading countries of the global South in addressing the challenges we have. As South Africans, we are highly resilient people. I've seen and been in India and China and seen the journey they have walked. I always say to my Chinese friends, when I first came to China, there were more bicycles on the road than cars. Of course, that situation is changed today. How is it that these countries have been able to grow their economies and become global powerhouse, leading economies in the world? We have lessons to draw from there, and we have best practices to draw from there. They are solid partners of ours. They want to help us, and I think we should take advantage of that. And this year we are well positioned. Being in the chair of BRICS, we're going to have all the BRICS leaders here in August for the summit that will be hosted by President Ramaphosa, together with many African leaders, and that will give us an opportunity to discuss further and look at how we can partner in addressing our problems. As I said, we are a highly resilient, highly creative country with very capable people. We have come out of the depths of apartheid and we triumphed. We will come out of the darkness of our power challenges and we will have light. Thank you.
I liked your last line, Ambassador, we shall conquer. But I must say this, it's not going to be automatic. I think the time has come for us to be frank and open about these issues. Representing business and standing here, I can tell you without state without a shadow of a doubt that a business has identified specific projects that could deliver to the grid as much as 4,000 megawatt watts by 2026, 2027. That's very clear. If you were to talk to business people, and dare say the city and the province, but in particular business people, they will tell you that there are specific projects identified that could deliver as much as 4,000 megawatt by 2026, 2027. We need to bring environmentalists on the table, maybe in the context of that state of emergency that President spoke about. We need to roll red carpet, not red tape to investors. Stop all manner of games and focus on business. I think as we go out to have lunch, let's come back here and be clear that by the, or at least there will be an agreement that at least 4,000 megawatt can be delivered, and perhaps call the mayor to come back here to assure us that red carpet will be rolled to the investors, red carpet will be rolled to the bankers who are here and ready to put money into these projects. There's going to be a bit of a change. If you look into your programs, you'll see that we need to be having now, we ought to be doing the high-level panel on implementing strategic reforms in the energy industry. We will move that to after lunch. We will break for lunch now, and my time is 12 o'clock. We would like everyone to be back here by 1:45. 1:45 on the nose. We should all be seated here. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.